What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Walkout Network. It's your man, Ant Walker, here with another edition of Unleashed. Of course, got to introduce a great panel and our special guest this week. You've seen him here before, and I'm sure you've seen a lot of him recently if you've been paying attention to any UFC press conferences and whatnot. He is Rodney James of Cage Side Press. Rodney, good as always to have you on the show. How are you feeling, my man?
Thank you, man. It's don't forget the last part. I introduced myself as Rodney James, which people get confused, and I'm not trying to bust your chops here. It's Rodney James Edgar. So you don't forget, I'm an Edgar. Frankie's my cousin. Who I ran into him this weekend actually too, man, and he actually had some words of encouragement after that press conference. We could talk about that later, though. I'm doing good. I don't know how I'm going to be after this, though, because I'm sure that my wife is not thrilled that I was gone all week, which, I was obviously covering the fights here in town, but I wasn't home. And here I am on Monday, and I'm right back in the grind. But that's how it goes. Glad to be here.
Yeah, MMA media wife is one of the most patient creatures on earth. So, all right, of course, we always have to have a good intro for the senior editor of Sherdog.com. He is the jack of all trades that has mastered them all, Mr. Ben Duffy. Ben, what's going on, my man?
I'm doing really well. It's been a great weekend of fights. I'm just excited to be here to discuss them with the panel.
Absolutely. And of course, the panel is anchored every week by the man with the numbers, the mathematician, the statistician, also Sherdog.com. He is Jay Petrie. Jay, what's going on, brother?
Man, I am really excited to talk about what happened this weekend. There's a whole lot of mess to talk about, and a whole lot of happy, a whole lot of crazy, a whole lot of sad. It's going to be a lot of fun. But let's start things off with a non-topical, because I'm assuming we're going to talk about some other bigger events, non-topical stat of the week. The stat of the week is 8.3. So not related to the UFC, in fact. Invicta Fighting Championship. Following their Phoenix Series 3 event on Friday, the last 3 events for Invicta have combined for a finish rate of 8.3%. 2 finishes in the last 24 fights. So that's your stat of the week.
Oh, wow. Definitely not the most exciting number, if you can imagine that. But I've got something that might be even less exciting. And that was the main event of UFC 248. Israel Adesanya defends his title successfully against Yoel Romero to very tepid responses from fans, fighters, and media alike. So now that, it's been a couple of days removed from what we expect it to be more exciting. Now, what do we think about this? Rodney, I'll start with you. Who's at fault for what happened in that main event?
When I watched the fight, obviously the first round was weird. Neither one of them kind of really did anything. At the end of 5 rounds, I kind of was a little, I don't want to say disgusted, but I was a little disappointed with Israel Adesanya, and I'll tell you why. Because Yoel, at least, he did swing for the fences. He could have been more active, for sure. But I don't know. I mean, there wasn't a lot of metrics to go off of. It was like, what did Israel Adesanya really do? I mean, that he chewed up that leg, but it's like I watched Yoel get up and dance at the press conference, and it's a video of him running on sand today. I know there's bravado there. I mean, there's definitely a lot of damage to that leg. So I guess that's the biggest X factor. But I'll tell you what swayed my opinion a little bit, and maybe just because he's a good wordsmith. And that's when the champion came backstage and he told us, look, he said, I did what I had to do. Which he said on the mic after the fight, but he said, look, I told him, I looked at him in there and I said, show me that you want this. If you want it, come get it. That's what you have to do. And I think a lot of times when people hear that phrase, if you want to be the man, you got to beat the man, they think that somehow that means that the scoring standards should be different. I disagree. I don't think that's what it means. I think it means that if it's going to be close and that going into the 5th round, there's a possibility that the judges will say, hey, you know what? The other guy won and you're the contender that's trying to get the title. You have nobody to blame but yourself. You got to go after the champ. You got to take that belt. And he didn't do that. So it's Yoel Romero's fault. And the fact that he came backstage and wasted like half an hour of our lives just basically just doing kayfabe. I mean, he was just sitting up there being goofy. Like, we weren't learning anything. All the questions were just stupid, and all the answers were, even worse. I mean, I almost just walked out of there and went home. I was like, I could do without the rest of this. But yeah, that was my thought. Not a great fight, but it is what it is. It's a good notch on Stylebender's belt, because you know what? Few fights from now, people are going to forget all about it, and they won't forget about his record with one of the scariest dudes on the planet, as one of the bodies that he's snatched.
You know what? I think you brought up an interesting point about within a few fights, people are just going to forget that this happened. As far as the taint that a lot of people are saying that it has on Stylebender's legacy, I'm just amazed at how quickly the tides can turn. We go from appointing Israel Adesanya like the greatest thing since sliced bread in mixed martial arts, and he's the heir apparent to every throne that has been abandoned before him. And now one fight against, quite frankly, a weird matchup, and an even weirder fighter. And now he's boring. Now he's a track star. Now he runs. Now he's not a real warrior, et cetera, et cetera. Jay, let me just get your quick thoughts on this. Do you think Israel Adesanya is to blame at all for what happened Saturday?
I mean, we know MMA is just hot take city. Sunday morning and Saturday night is just, it's almost, you don't want to go online because you're going to get takes of all varieties, and I'm sure there's one particular take we'll talk about later of a different fight, but just MMA Twitter just falls apart after a big fight night, especially with this controversial result. Yeah, I mean, you have to blame both fighters for how it went down. Like, I'll give you another statistics I was saving for later, but it's important to say now. The whole fight combined, in the whole main event, combined for 88 significant strikes, 88 in a 25-minute span between these two men. The fifth round, just round 5 for Joanna versus Weili Zhang, combined for 83. So it's just a sad kind of disappointment because of the expectations. I mean, I'll be honest, and I said it in the broadcast last week, I wasn't really into this fight until the stare down at the ceremonial weigh-ins where he pulled out the cigar and he broke it and he walked over and they just stared at each other for like a minute. And then I'm like, okay, I'm interested. But really, I'm not far off from what Matt Wells said on the Walk of Shame the other night. I'm over Yoel Romero, and I don't want to see this ever. I don't want to see him near a title again. But yeah, you have to blame Adesanya to an extent. I mean, at least he was trying, but I don't know. There could have been so much more.
I'm going to bring up something else that Matt Wells of the Slip and Dip podcast brought up on the Walk of Shame Saturday night, and he almost looked at it as karmic justice for this matchup even being made. That we decided to go around the normal parameters for what makes a viable title challenger and just go for something silly and fun and throw all caution to the wind. And this is what we get.
Watch out, Jose Aldo. Watch your
back. Ben, I don't know about you, but I'm kind of feeling that. It feels like this is kind of what we deserve for, for having a viable field of contenders at middleweight, and then appointing the guy who's on the 2-fight losing streak.
I agree with you. I think there's plenty of blame to go around here. The thing that bothers me is that after the fight, Adesanya gets on the mic in the cage and he says, this is what Romero does. He'll take 2 minutes off and then fight for a minute and then wait and do nothing. And I was like, yes, but if you knew that and this was the best you could prepare to deal with it, that doesn't say great things about you as a champ. And I'm one of the people that I was actually disappointed in how the fight turned out. I expected it to be more exciting. I expected Adesanya to knock out Romero somewhere in the middle rounds. I think in the Sherdog pick I picked him in the second or third round. But that was based on me expecting Romero to have a sense of urgency, maybe realize this was his final shot at a UFC title, and fight out of character. And I was wrong. He didn't fight out of character. He did exactly what Yoel Romero has always done, only amplified. Because he's always been the guy that will just kind of wait like somebody who dropped their controller in Mortal Kombat until he picks the controller back up and throws something brutal. That's his MO. It's carried him a long way. And he simply did that against Adesanya to a greater extent than he has in any of his previous fights, because Adesanya was similarly stubborn and was like, I'm not going to instigate either, which is why we ended up with several long stretches that looked like a game of Mortal Kombat where both people dropped their controllers. So during the fight, I actually wasn't that irate, because there was still a sense of peril. There was still a sense that this kind of simmering cauldron might blow at any moment. As soon as the final horn blew and there were nothing blew, I was like, oh man, this sucked. And at that point, yeah, it all falls into place. This is definitely karmic justice on the UFC for booking Yoel Romero in a title fight and getting Yoel Romero. And Adesanya is smart enough to point out the strategic and tactical tendencies that led to that fight, but apparently not smart enough to do anything about them. So he is not blame-free either, but he is still your UFC middleweight champ. He is still undefeated, and the train rolls on, and he doesn't even need to wait until his next title defense. This will be forgotten, and he'll be the golden child again in a month for saying something funny on social media, and he'll roll on.
You know, Francis Ngannou, though, it took him 3 knockouts, and there we go. He's here again. Remember what he did with Derek Lewis, which was that kind of fight too. I'm sorry to interrupt you, Am, but I also want to ask you too. I may have gone a little rogue when scoring this fight for Sherdog.com and the play-by-play. I scored the first round at 10-10. And here's the controversial, potentially part. I'm not a huge 10-10 guy, but I scored the first round 10-10 because 6 strikes were landed in total in the first round. I scored the 5th round at 10-10 as well. So I gave it 49-48, which is a weird score, but 49-48 for Adesanya. Am I crazy?
No, I don't think you're crazy. Like, I didn't score that last round of 10-10. In fact, I can pull up my scorecard now. I definitely scored the first round a 10-10. It's very difficult for me to assign anyone a winner of a round where only one significant blow was landed. Yeah, and you're seeing Wing Chun blocks, you're seeing posing, we're seeing Ali shuffles, but we're not seeing a lot of people touch each other. Very, very difficult for me to assign a winner in that. Yeah, I gave Adesanya the final round, actually. Yeah, so I scored at 49-47. I don't see. I mean, those first 2 rounds, it's not much to go by. So I'm kind of okay no matter where you put your 10s and 9s. But the last 3 rounds, I mean, essentially, the only real offense was the successful offense, I should say, came from Adesanya. It came from him angling out, throwing those leg kicks. Romero threw a little bit. He didn't land very much, and what didn't land cleanly. His takedown attempts failed. Also, the takedown attempts kind of signaled to me that I think Romero realized what was going on. He realized he wasn't having much success. So, interestingly, that an Olympic silver medalist would use wrestling as his final line of defense, but that's essentially what Romero does these days, is use wrestling as his final line of defense, and that failed. I didn't see any reason why Yoel Romero was so irate after this fight. To spend 25 minutes unsuccessfully trying to land on, quite frankly, a better opponent, and then after the final bell, you get in his face and you yell, like, maybe you should have closed that distance within the distance. Just maybe. Maybe this social media campaign of I'm the people's champ with perhaps one of the most ignorant displays in post-fight press conference history was completely unwarranted because you legitimately lost the fight. It just seems so counterproductive, and quite frankly, I could have done without this. There is a reason why you put the rightful challengers in against the champion, because at the very least you can say the best fought the best, and that was the results. With this, we can't even say that. We deviated from what should have happened, and we got a pile of crap in return. So karmic justice. Shout out to Matt Wells on that one. All right, everyone. So let's move on to the fight that I think we all really want to talk about. And that was Weili Zhang, the UFC's strawweight champion, defending her title against Joanna Jedrzejczyk, the former champion. So let's just do it. Swing or miss. Was this one of the greatest fights in UFC history? I'll start with you, Rodney.
Backstage, my two UFC watching buddies for the co-main and main event has become Oscar Willis and Casey from MMA Fighting, because when that part of the night rolls around, we break all the camera stuff away because they're not doing scrums anymore. Now we're just kind of in a waiting pattern until everybody comes back to talk to us for the press conference. And so it ends up, we're just hardcore. The three of us are like the most hardcore fight fans that are left back there, because everybody else is, is down on the floor. And dude, it's like the opposite of watching in Buffalo Wild Wings. It's like you got a guy on either side of you that actually knows what the hell they're looking at. And dude, we were just like freaking, I mean, you would have thought we were like having a watch party, like at my house or something, dude. Like we were just jumping up and down. We were screaming. We're going crazy. And we're like finishing each other's sentences, we'll be like, this is the greatest women's fight of all time. No, this might be one of the greatest fights of all time. The greatest title fight. Definitely the greatest female MMA fight, bar none. I mean, I don't need to. I mean, there are no words. I mean, it just is. I mean, it was everything that you wanted. And the thing is, too, they really set the example. To me, they set the example as far as, just what we didn't see in the main event. Man, get out there and get after. Joanna looked like somebody who wanted to win that freaking title. I know people are saying, well, how come she didn't look like against Rose, and especially in the rematch? Like, dude, I don't know. But I could tell you this. She was more motivated to get that damn belt back than she has been in the past. And holy smokes, man. That's what I want to see. Now, as far as that damage, I don't like to see that, but that's the hurt business.
Yeah, absolutely. So, gentlemen, let's go ahead and share scorecards for that fight if you have them handy. I'll start. I scored it 48-47 for Weili Zhang. I had it even going into the last round, and Zhang just landing more significant shots did it for me. Even though Joanna, without me looking at the statistics in real time, it looked like Joanna was doing better as far as volume is concerned. But where are we lying with scorecards there? Jay, what did you have it as?
I had 49-46 for the champ, Weili Zhang. I had Joanna winning the third round is the round I gave to her. Now I could see the second round was pretty darn close. I mean most of them were really close in terms of the numbers, in terms of the power in the shots. It was Zhang all the way. It reminded me of a crazier, and this might be weird, a crazier, more dramatic and exciting Dustin Poirier, Max Holloway. Max Holloway had the volume like Joanna did, and Dustin Poirier had that power that there was a little bit more on his punches, and he'd get the reaction. He couldn't, like Zhang, she busted her, she rearranged her, she movie referenced her, but it wasn't, she just couldn't put her down, which was very surprising because of, people, somebody, I think the internet was saying, how did Rose do it and Weili couldn't do it? But yeah, I'm also swinging. The commentary booth said, oh, this is they gave the qualifier, the greatest women's bout of all. Well, yes, of course it is. I mean, what were the other best ones beforehand? Joanna Andrade, Joanna Claudia Gadelha,
maybe Kat Zingano, Miesha Tate.
That was good. Jessica Andrade and Angela Hill sticks out for me for some reason because it was just one of those punching everybody. But yeah, this wins. But man, to put John Jones versus Alexander Gustafsson, the Hall of Fame that night, inspired them. And I feel like it was that kind of just everything that there was there. I have to put it in the same breath as a Jones Gus, a Robbie Rory, Shogun Hendo. I just have to, immediate, recency bias aside, I feel like it's going to sit up there.
Yeah, I definitely will put this above Shogun Hendo. This, from a pure technical standpoint, you could see excellent coaching influencing what was going on throughout every single round, and the adjustments that they tried to make, and the answers and adjustments in response to those answers and adjustments was masterful. I would be very surprised if we get a better fight than that in 2020. Ben, how were you behaving during this? Did you turn into fanboy also?
I had an interesting experience for this whole card, or at least the whole main card. Normally, if I'm watching a UFC pay-per-view at home with site responsibilities, I'll have the sound off. You know, like I don't like to listen to the commentary because I am exactly the kind of person that just totally gets swayed by it. I know that about myself, so I help myself by muting the TV and either putting on some music or having like an unplugged guitar on my lap or listening to my wife comment on everybody's hairstyles. You know, like whatever it might be. But since all I was doing was scoring the fights, I actually went over to a friend's house. This friend's house gathering had several professional fighters, including one UFC fighter. So it was like being in a very amped up yet knowledgeable and tiny Buffalo Wild Wings for the entire main card, and everybody was losing their mind. I scored it 49-46. In fact, I scored it exactly the same as Jay. But in hindsight, I'm not mad at anybody that gave Joanna the second round. You know, like I already having rewatched it, I still can't find 3 rounds to give Joanna. So I think the right person won in the end. But I'm not mad at all at a 48-47. You know, 48-47, 49-46. All of these rounds were pretty close. And several of them were close enough that I'm fine entertaining someone that wanted to give it to the other fighter. In terms of recency bias, I am the anti-recency bias person. I'm like that crusty old baseball fan that refuses to admit that anything happening right now is better than like Walter Johnson's 1922 season or whatever. And even so, I'm sitting here thinking, is this in the 5 greatest UFC fights ever? And when talking about that, I'm going to entertain only title fights. Some insane slobber knocker in the middle of a main card that didn't mean that much doesn't even enter into the discussion. I'm like, is this better than Robbie versus Rory? Is this better than John versus Gus? Is this better than Couture versus Hizzo? That's what I'm thinking about. And I don't know if it'll end up being in my top 5 all time once all the dust settles, but I wouldn't be surprised if it did. It had everything I want to see in a great fight. It had arguably, the 2 best fighters in the division, maybe the 2 best fighters in the history of that division. It was extremely high technical level. I mean, I think, and I'm sorry if I misattribute this, I think it was Connor Rebush of the Heavy Hands podcast and, formerly of SureDog.com, who was like, has Weili Zhang learned to throw a left hook during the course of this fight? Like, that was like the level of in-game adjustment that was being made. It was fantastic as a technical display. It was fantastic as a display of heart and guts. I mean, at what point during the progression of Joanna Jedrzejczyk's facial reconstruction would you have tapped out of that fight? I would have been done about halfway through the 3rd round. I would have been like, I don't know what this is going on up here, but I want to go home. I want to go home and put an end swell the size of like, a small car on my face. It had everything. It was an amazing fight, and it was absolutely, worth the price of admission for the whole card.
My head swelled just watching it. Like, that was so all right, so 2 things to conclude our discussion about this particular fight. One, was that the worst hematoma that you can remember in combat sports?
Yes.
I have to think so. It
was too expansive
around the head.
Yeah, it was like a helmet.
Like the fluid, the fluid like migrated down into the lower half of her face, like she had swelling down here.
It looked like headgear. Like that's
yeah.
That was
worse than Mark Hominick,
worse than Hassam Rahman.
Hasim Rahman, worse than that one, worse than
Matt Mitrione and
Jerome Lebanner, worse than Matt Mitrione. This is the worst hematoma I have ever seen in any combat sports fight ever, let alone at this high level. Again, I was sitting in a room, pretty full of professional fighters, where I wouldn't say too much. And the consensus from the room was, I just want to know what's in it.
John kept hitting it. You guys probably saw the slow-mo replay. She's hitting. You could see it go.
Yeah. Zhang was sweeping the leg, Johnny. Like she did not laugh. Like she started like nailing that thing with her jab.
Right.
And we just all wanted to know if that burst is like blood going to come out, is water going to come out?
Is it sick to have secretly desired for that to have exploded at some point?
No, I'm sure people.
Does that make me disturbed?
No, Dr. Pimple Papa, you're okay.
Well, I guess, and the last thing we'll address about this fight before moving on to a couple other aspects of this card, not to be outdone by Yoel Romero, perhaps the most ignorant take centered around UFC 248 had to come from UFC lightweight Islam Makhachev, whose only response after watching such an incredible classic unfold before our eyes was that women don't belong in mixed martial arts. I don't think I need to go into any further detail to express my disgust at a statement that ignorant. I'll just say this, like, if you are a fringe contender, and I use the word contender loosely, maybe you shouldn't be criticizing the champion and the former champion in an all-time classic. Perhaps.
Can I just add a little caveat to that too?
Absolutely.
His upcoming opponent, as you know, former training partner of mine, friend of mine. I sent him a screenshot of that along with his striking coach. I won't comment on what I said. It's private, but I will say that it's going to be some added motivation for those fellows because they didn't take kindly to it either. I mean, it's not the way you want to represent yourself. Like, yeah, especially like when you haven't compared to those girls. I mean, you haven't done shit. You're not a world champion, and they got out there and just like I said earlier, they fought the way that we want to see everybody fight. Fight like you want to win. Fight like you want to entertain and like you deserve to be at the top of a card. And then in that moment, that's the moment where you decide to shit on it. And then I see some people coming to the defense and saying, well, it's because of, religion. I don't give a fuck. Okay. I don't give a fuck about your religious excuse. If that's the narrative we're going with, because quite frankly, that means jack shit to me. I'm not going to sit there and disrespect religion, but at the same time, if that is the reason, it damn sure doesn't give you a right to disrespect those ladies.
Well, if it's an issue with the religion, why was he the only one that said it?
Yeah. And I thought about tweeting more on that, and then I was like, you know what? I've had enough heat for 1 week. I'm just gonna sit this one out.
Yeah, I'm really I was really stunned by the level of pure ignorance in that, especially when you're fighting on the same cards as these female athletes that are outperforming you, out earning you, doing everything better than you. Show some respect. They clearly have more accomplished careers than he'll ever have. So let's.
So unless I'm mistaken, he's fighting in 249, which is co-main evented by Andrade versus Rose.
Yep. Where he will most likely be outshined and out-earned yet again. So I'm
prelims, I think.
Yeah, I don't think there's much room to talk.
Knows.
Right.
I don't know. We were just I was just asking Lynch about this the other day because when they announced it, it was like prelims. But yeah, that's a missed opportunity if that's the case. They need to put that on the main card.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, so let's move on from this one because we had two other developments in UFC 248 that are worth mentioning. Ring rust is a myth, according to Neil Magny and Sean O'Malley. Both came back from long USADA-related layoffs, and they had very big wins. Who was more impressive to you, Jay?
This was pretty easy for me, so I don't need to expound on a long topic, because I expected Sean O'Malley to kind of steamroll Jose Alberto Quinones. I expected him to win probably by knockout. Maybe if he catch a submission when he was coming forward, but I just felt like it was his fight to lose. On the other hand, I picked Li Jingliang to steamroll, or at least eventually get the upper hand when Magny got tired in mid-round 2 and finished the fight in round 3. So just by that metric, Magny was far more impressive, because Jingliang had been killing it lately. He booted David Zavada to the body, and then he just beat the brakes off of Izzy Dos Santos. I stole that from you, by the way. I thought he'd do the same. I thought he'd close the distance, work Magny over. Magny, I gave the second round to Neil Magny by 10-8. I did not see a 10-8 round in that fight coming, or a potential 10-8 round. But the biggest thing for me about Magny and his performance, he's right back in top 15 contention. So that's huge.
All right. I'm with you 100%, Jay. To have a win over someone who was surging like Lee means a lot more than Jose Quinones, even though he's a solid competitor in his own right. That style matchup seemed to favor Sean O'Malley. It seemed like a custom-made fight for him. Magny, on the other hand, had a serious uphill battle. Anyone on the panel want to make a case for O'Malley being the more impressive? And I think there is a case to be made there, though. All right, so I guess I'll just go ahead and contradict my own argument here. Only because, like, Sean O'Malley, and once again, I'm gonna harken back to something that Matt Wells said on the Walk of Shame Saturday night. I mean, to spend 2 years off and to walk right into that octagon with that level of confidence, with like just no hesitation, just freely doing everything that he did before. It just, I don't know. Like O'Malley, I think cemented even further the potential star quality that he has with that performance. It's so rare that you see a guy that age who's been disrupted from his rhythm for that long just pick it up like nothing ever happened. Neil Magny, on the other hand, is a much more seasoned veteran. He's someone who probably would spend that off time in a more reasonable fashion. He's a guy who's lifelong competitor. He was a U.S. Army combatives champion as well. There are a lot of tools in that toolbox that he could lean on. A lot of experience that he can lean on, just as a man, as an older, more mature person, to lead him to some sort of victory. But O'Malley, being a star without having the octagon experience, and to just jump right back in there like nothing ever happened, was pretty stunning. Still, all that said, Neil Magny impressed me more.
Well, let me ask Rodney and Ben, so they can kind of weigh in on the topic. Who are you more excited to see next, if in their next fight, Magny or O'Malley?
Man, that's like trying to rank your kids. I mean, even I agree with the consensus, as far as Neil Magny being the more impressive, just because of, the quality level of opponent. And, not to take anything away from Quinones, but, with Magny, we saw him bounce back from adversity as well. We've never even seen really Sean O'Malley, other than like the broken foot that time in the fight, which he still won. So yeah, there's still a lot of unanswered questions with that kid. So it was good, but as far as like exciting, like, yeah, for me, it's Magny, because that's a guy that on his best day, he can beat the best guys in the welterweight division. And, it's not out of the realm of possibility that, dare I say, that he makes a climb to the absolute top of the division. I do think he's that good. I don't know why it took him so long to get going, and sometimes that just happens, but who knows, man? I just enjoy watching him. If you remember, he has one of the greatest comebacks of all time, the Hector Lombard fight. He was just getting CTE in bulk delivered via Hector Lombard sledgehammers, and what do you know? He came back around and probably did some permanent damage to Hector Lombard, his damn self. So yeah, I'm going to go with Neil. I always look forward to him. Sean, very likable kid. I don't think he's I think there's unfair criticism about him being like super hype train, all this. Yeah. You know what? He's flashy though. He's a young kid. He's got great personality, but in the times that I've spoken to him, and it's been a few times that I've had the opportunity to talk with him at Fight Week, he's actually a really humble, down to earth guy. I mean, he's not, he's likable because he's got charisma and he doesn't try too hard. He's not acting like he's starved for attention, man. He's just who he is. He fights the way he fights. And yeah.
He dresses
God
like Prince.
Oh God, yeah. Talking about another guy next to Paulo Costa who's been getting all types of obscure, hilarious references. What was the one I saw? I think Anthony retweeted it or something. It was like, shit, I forget.
I said he was dressed like Amelia Earhart at the media day.
I've seen a bunch of takes that came out. It's like every one of these is solid gold, man. God bless MMA Twitter sometimes.
Disco Stew was another one that seemed pretty popular. So yeah, shout out to Sean O'Malley's fashion sense right there. That was never stopping the entertaining persona. All right, fellas, so let's move on to the best titled segment in all of media history, and that is I'm Not Surprised, Mr. Falcons. This is where we get to share something about the fights over the weekend, whether it be UFC 248, LFA 83, or Invicta Phoenix series. Was it the fights, the pre-fight, the post-fight, anything that surprised us? We'll start with our guest, Rodney. What was your I'm Not Surprised, Mr. Falcons moment? Yeah,
so I told you that I made it happen as far as going to the open workouts. I almost didn't get to go, but I just felt like, with all the talent that was going to be on display there, it was worth checking out and covering. So I did that. Yoel Romero came out with a guy, and I forget his name, but he's a world champion wrestler, and it's a training partner. He did not hit pads whatsoever. He didn't throw punches, kicks. He didn't do anything except wrestle the entire time. We saw some really cool explosive movements and slams. I'm sure all of you guys listening and gentlemen on the panel probably saw some of that footage across the interwebs and what have you. And then he got out there and didn't do a damn bit of wrestling. And look, I know I'm just an armchair analyst, right? I mean, what do I know? But I mean, whatever he was doing wasn't working, so I was very surprised. And anytime that he did threaten, I mean, he did feint some takedowns, and he did, he feinted some level changes, and he did attempt a couple of takedowns. Maybe that took the gem out of his donut, and he was disappointed or frustrated in the fact that Israel seemed to stuff those pretty easily, and I think he might have put him on his butt like briefly, and then he just bounced right back up. And then the other times that he got a hold of him and he got him to the cage, he let him go and then he backed off. And I literally was saying with my buddies, Oscar and Casey, I was like, what the hell is he doing? They're like, oh, well, he doesn't want to gas himself. I'm like, well, you're going to have to do something. You might as well gas yourself in the process trying to win the fight, because if you're trying to conserve energy and not trying to win, that ain't going to work. And we saw how that ended.
All right, good one right there. Ben, what's your I'm Not Surprised, Mr. Falcons moment of the week?
Well, when I do these, I always try to, pick something that both surprised and didn't surprise me to kind of demonstrate or exemplify the general state of confusion in which I follow this sport. And that always makes it really easy to talk the weekend after Beneil Dariush fights. Now, understand that I loved Beneil Dariush. I'm a fan. I enjoy his fights, but I always find myself surprised. He is a fighter with all the tools, a ton of heart, smart guy who nonetheless sometimes finds ways to lose when he really shouldn't. And even in the fights he wins, just gives me some heart palpitations. I'm not a big betting man, period. But even if I were, I would never bet on a Beneil Dariush fight. And his fight versus Drakkar Klose put me through the entire spectrum of human emotion in about 8 minutes. he was favored, and rightly so. Theoretically, he is better everywhere than Drakkar Klose is, and nonetheless, I was like, this is exactly the kind of fight where he's going to get caught by something silly and knock the hell out.
Mm-hmm.
And when, was it even halfway into the round, he ended up taking Klose's back standing and putting him in a standing body triangle for the remainder of the round while like working on a choke and like boxing his ears. I was like, if this doesn't work, Dariush is toast. Ironically, again, I watched the main card in a room full of amateur and professional fighters. Everybody in the room looked at me and was like, so tell us about Drakkar Klose. I said, well, aside from the fact that his name sounds like something you'd see at the like imposter cologne kiosk at the mall, he's a guy with decent skills everywhere, but the most impressive thing is he hits really hard with his right hand. And my thought was, if Dariush doesn't like get him to the ground and tap him out, Dariush might get knocked out, because even in fights that he wins, he's just a hittable guy. Smaller guys get inside on him and ring him up. Anyway, I was, and I will freely admit, pleasantly surprised to see that the weird round where he spent 3.5 minutes as a backpack did not end up costing him in the end. I don't know if the second round of Dariush versus Klose would be the round of the year, but if Sherdog.com gave out an award for the minute of the year, that's your minute of the year right there. That is a Korean Zombie versus Yair Rodriguez condensed into about 65 seconds. It was completely bananas. Everybody in the living room was like jumping out of their seats and yelling at the TV. There was no technical analysis going on whatsoever. And I'm glad that the knockout came, because otherwise I don't know how the fuck I was going to score that round. So thank you, Beneil Dariush. Every time you fight, I am like Forrest Gump opening that box of chocolates. I do not know what I'm going to get, but I'm here for it.
All right. Jay, can you share with us your I'm Not Surprised Mr. Falcons moment this week?
So I'd like to take everybody on a trip to the best women's fight of the weekend until Joanna Jedrzejczyk fought Weili Zhang. Invicta Fighting Championship had its Phoenix Series 3 event, which had a one-night tournament, and it was headlined by a bantamweight title fight between two women who for the vacant belt. Yulia Stoliarenko, who was on Tough 28, she made her debut with the promotion, taking on the unbeaten Lisa Verzosa. And so Stoliarenko, every single one of her prior wins came by a first-round armbar. So she was like a Euro Ronda, I guess you want to say. So once it got out of the first round, I figured it'd be over. Well, it wasn't. The two just absolutely went crazy over 5 rounds. It was a incredible fight, but it looks like moldy garbage compared to the Joanna fight, just because of the level of how good it was. But to my great surprise, Stoliarenko hit Verzosa with an elbow, and the elbow just all the way here to here, right down her forehead. It was a long, gushing gash of just a fight ender. Period. The end. A fight stopper. We've seen it before. Nasty, horrible, deep cut that was several inches long, and then she had another one down here. And the doctor's like, you're good. We'll keep going, right? It was the bloodiest. It was the bloodiest women's bout I've probably ever seen before, and I've seen quite a few. I've watched every Invicta card, and Hook and Shoot, and Smack Girls, and all the above. But oh my God, I didn't expect it. I didn't see it coming. Now, as I mentioned, the finish rate for Invicta is critically low the last few events, and that went full 5 rounds. And I want to see 5 more, because it was just that kind of fight. If you haven't watched this fight, it is worth going back just to see a Invicta version of Ross Houston versus Nicholas Dalby. Just a bloody back and forth. Everybody's going crazy and taking shots and it was a blast. And I didn't see it coming at all.
All right. Well, I'm not surprised. Mr. Falcon's moment came from Deron Winn, who, despite being such an accomplished wrestler, just refuses to use it, and found himself submitted by Gerald Mearshart. Very, just very disappointing results we've seen from Winn this far into his UFC journey. Just got to wonder if it's time to try to make your way down to 170, or is it time to retool? Is it time to do something? But Deron Winn so far has not lived up to expectations. So I hope he gets back on track. All right, everyone. So now our next segment here. Can't really say it's much of a segment, but we did have a very interesting press conference for UFC 249 that was a part of 248 Fight Week, featuring Khabib Nurmagomedov and Tony Ferguson.
And
so
who else are they featuring?
And Mr. Rodney James Edgar. So Rodney, just share with us your thoughts. What did you make of the press conference? Of course, you had your involvement there, but we'll get to that. What did you think of the press conference overall?
Fuck you.
Are we doing this? Are we doing this now? We're doing this?
I thank you guys so much for having me and giving me an opportunity to address the audience in a better venue than social media. Can everybody hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Oh, and nice look, Jay. I want to also say thanks for the cheese, because some publicity is better than no publicity. Let me just address some of the peanut gallery's ridiculous takes. But before I say that, let me just say that I had an overwhelming amount of peers, of fighters, of fans, coaches, other people in the media reach out to me either personally or through DMs, various different ways, text message, social media, etc. And even perfect strangers on the comments. It was overwhelmingly people that had my back, or people that were kind of neutral, that were like, yeah, maybe that wasn't, good timing, you didn't read the room, whatever. But then you've also got that dark abyss of just the toxicity of the shithawks that live on MMA Twitter, and they live to just talk shit about anything and everything that they think they're supposed to be talking shit about. Well, I got something to say to you knuckleheads. First of all, I don't need your advice. I'm pretty fucking good at what I do. I've been doing this for a while. I have a degree in broadcast journalism, and all I have to do is finish 50 pages on my thesis, which for us, honestly, 50 pages is nothing. Like, it's just a formality. It's a matter of me sitting my fucking busy ass down and just knocking it out. I'm going to have my master's degree in journalism. I teach at a major university. I teach news writing in a broadcast journalism program. So if you think that what I asked was an inappropriate question, I got news for you. That's why you're not a journalist, because a lot of what we do is we ask questions that people don't want to ask. We ask questions that people are afraid to ask. That is why I'm the one that's out there on the front lines doing the job. So with all due respect, I don't tell you how to make a Subway sandwich. Actually, I do tell you how to make a Subway sandwich. So I want some fucking oregano on my spicy Italian bitch. And no, I don't want chips and a drink. You ask me that shit every time, and I always say no. I'm going to next door to Dollar Tree and buy a big ass bag of chips for $1 instead of your overpriced bullshit.
Can we get the chips? I'll eat the chips.
I'll get you some chips, dog.
Thank
you. Want onions?
Nah, this sour cream and onion is good for me.
Sour cream and onion, man. Good taste. So that's the first thing. And, you got people, the other reason, people say, it's an inappropriate question. Are you telling me there's not other people that wondered that same fucking question? First of all. Second of all, it's not like I asked him if I could fuck his wife, for God's sakes. That's an inappropriate question. Asking him something that is look, how many times has this fight been booked? The doctors had to clear him because of mental health for his last fight. You're telling me that is not relevant? Again, that's why you're not a journalist, because what we see where a story can be made. News is all about it's about quotes, it's about sound bites, it's about starting a conversation. And what we do in the media, sometimes we ask questions that are specifically designed for creating sound bites. Maybe not necessarily because we might actually know the answer to that question. We just want to hear you talk about it because there's a story there. That is what we do. Most news stories come from interviews, period. Whether it's an interview that you saw or an interview that you did, that is where most journalists get their information from, is from stuff that people do and stuff that people say. Now, the other thing that people are critical of as well, a press conference is about fight promotion. Hey, look, I'm gonna show you guys something. Well, I'm gonna actually just have to tell you. If you go to MMAJunkie.com, you look at all of their fight week coverage. I want to show you some interesting stats. UFC 248 predictions, 1.4 thousand shares. Yoel Romero makes weight, last to make weight, title fight official, 5.6 thousand shares. UFC 249 face-off video, Khabib and Tony, 12,000 shares. Now, check this one out. Check this craziness out. After Tony Ferguson's fuck you reaction, MMA reporter explains bringing up mental health. 78,000 shares. 78,000. Okay, so while we're in the grind all week long, traveling from this place to that place and getting interviews, setting up cameras, being in these scrums and doing all this stuff, all that work, and literally I have almost 80,000 people talking about Tony Ferguson for asking a fucking question. And oh, by the way, if he would have answered the question the way that Ben Rothwell did, which you can see at MMAsoldier.com right now, if you go to the MMA tab, I went ahead and reposted that video from UFC San Antonio back in July. And not only did he have some fantastic things to say, but he had some amazing words of encouragement to say to people who might be struggling from mental health. Now, I don't see any of this to pile on Tony. I'm not really salty at Tony as much as I am the shithawks that think that it's their right or their obligation even to try to tell us that we're not real journalists. I already told you what my credentials are. In fact, I mean, I can show them to you. I mean, I got this one, LFA, UFC, Bellator. I got degrees from accredited universities. I'm from the number 5 market in the country. I have a broadcast journalism degree from the number 5 market in the country. And you got shithawks that keep saying journalist in parentheses, while the only fucking thing you know about me, the only thing you've seen is 20 goddamn seconds. Meanwhile, the last 8 years of all the fucking hard work I've done, ranked UFC competitors, title contenders that have personally been on my fucking podcast, guys like Chael Sonnen, who don't owe me the time of day, who fucking Dean Thomas, people that I text with on a regular basis that respect my work. And you're going to call me a journalist in parentheses because you don't fucking know me. And you know something? If Tony would have answered that question the way that Ben Rothwell did, and we kept it moving, nobody would say a goddamn thing about it. So take your fucking bullshit outrage and shove it up your ass, because you're not really outraged. You're doing it because you think you're supposed to be. What you need to be doing is subscribing to my fucking YouTube channel, Rodney James 138. Follow me on Twitter at Rodney James 138. So you can see how it's done. And then if you really want to be my groupie, go to Rodney James Edgar on Instagram and follow me so you can see my handsome face. And one more time, I want to say, thanks for the cheese. Reddit, Twitter, YouTube comments, where the scum of the earth writhe in agony in the chamber of shame and sorrow. Hey guys, if you ever want to know what a vagina feels like, hit me up on Twitter, man. I'll tell you all about it.
I don't think that can be topped. So we're just going to move on to the speed pack.
So we're going to end this show right now, probably.
You trolls out there. That didn't go like you thought it was going to, did it?
I do want to mention something, though. I think it's important. I cover news for SureDog.com, and one of the stories I personally wrote up was about Tony, because I read the police reports. I read the issues where he threw holy water on his wife, where he ripped apart his fireplace because he thought there was somebody living in his walls. This is last year. This is an absolutely essential question to ask, not just a person, just skipping past the whole fact that he's another human being that you're kind of wondering about his status, he's going to go in a month to bludgeon another man. You kind of want to know where he is in the scheme of things in everything in his life.
A man who hit Edson Barboza with like 170
everything,
like significant
he
strikes,
hit everything strikes. Yeah,
we're gonna let that guy get in there and okay. I'm sorry to cut you off.
I no, absolutely. It is surprising to me that there is rancor directed towards you for asking a question that, I mean, how is it not the first question? Hey, Tony Ferguson, how are you doing? You know, because the way you phrased it was not an incendiary, a gotcha, an accusatory question. It was, hey man, I applaud the way you've been handling this. How would you, you can see the ways that it could help people. You've handled the difficult situation. What would your advice be to other people going through these situations? How is that not the first thing that people ask? I would want to know, as a journalist, as a fight fan, as a fellow human being. So yeah, I'm with you, buddy.
Yeah, there's I do think that we have to remember who we're dealing with sometimes, because we just had at the press conference ahead of 246, I think it was, where the gentleman that's a writer for New York Times asked about the sexual assault investigations going on against Conor McGregor, and he gets booed.
Yeah.
And you think, well, that's kind of relevant if we're promoting fights with this guy. Mark Raimondi got booed at the same press conference that you got booed at, James, for asking about the coronavirus, when we have promotions that are shutting down events and moving dates and everything because of a global health scare, and they booed that because they're stupid. I've had people throw shade at me because I rightfully question racist tweets and and whatnot. But here's the thing: if you're fucking stupid, you're just not gonna get it. You're just not. And quite frankly, I could give a shit if you get it or not. Like, come catch these hands, man. Hashtag clapback cartel. It's just, it is what it is, man. It is what it is. So with that, we're going to move on to the speed bag. And this is where I get to flex my authority on you mofos, because you have 10 seconds to answer these questions. All right. And let's see. We'll start with Ben, who's been so oddly quiet these last several minutes. So Ben, I'm going to ask you this question right here. Does Yoel Romero earn another title shot? You have 10 seconds.
No, I mean, at this point, he'd have to actually earn one by winning a couple fights in a row, either a 185 or 205. I don't think he does it. He's not going to get another undeserved shot, so no.
All right. Rodney, does Yoel Romero earn another UFC title shot?
No. Next question.
All right. And
10 seconds wasn't long enough to put the sunglasses back on to say fuck you.
I told y'all that guy already wasted too much of my time, dude. I got to move on.
All right. And Jay, does Yoel Romero get another title shot in the UFC?
I hope not. I mean, but to be perfectly honest, he didn't earn the last one. So what are you going to do? No. That's it.
All right. Okay, so in light of the UFC inducting Jon Jones versus Alexander Gustafsson into the Hall of Fame, which fighter would you choose to add to the Hall of Fame if you could only pick one? Rodney, I'll start with you.
Quentin Rampage Jackson, without a doubt. I mean, he unified the Pride Championship with the UFC Light Heavyweight Championship. Nothing like that has ever been done.
All right. Nice pick right there. Jay, who would you, or what fight would you add to the UFC Hall of Fame?
For a fighter, it has to be the inaugural lightweight champion, Jens Pulver. And if I had to pick a fight, I'm surprised that Edgar Maynard 2 hasn't been inducted yet.
Ooh. Nice pick right there. Ben, what about you?
I actually would have said Pulver, but at least put in the Pulver versus Penn first fight. We need to enshrine Pulver saying, my dad beat the shit out of me every day growing up. This was nothing.
That's a good one.
That's the realest moment I can remember from my first 10 years as a fan.
Fell to the ground crying. Oh my God. That was, I can still remember that. Jeez.
Nice.
Dude, I read his book, man, and it's a short and sweet read, and man, dude, he talks about the abuse like from his dad, and like fucking crazy, man. And nobody should ever have to go through that. And like I cannot imagine anybody would treat their kids like that. It's horrible.
Yeah.
Makes you sick.
Definitely. All right. So final question here. And I'll start. Who didn't go first yet? Jay, you didn't go first yet. All right. There we go. So can Olivier Aubin-Mercier make waves in the PFL's lightweight division?
I can see him making to the playoffs, but you got to keep in mind all 6 champions are from last year returning this year. So it is a grind fest, fellas. Buckle up.
All right. Ben, does OAM make waves in PFL's lightweight division?
Absolutely, but as the grindy wrestlers continue to float to the top there, Natan Schultz just going to grind them out.
All right. And Rodney, OAM, does he do the damn thing in PFL?
I don't know about the damn thing. A lot of people thought when he first came out, he was the second coming of GSP. So does he win the million? No, but I think he does make waves. Yeah, because he's faced higher competition.
All right. So now it's time for me to change the settings on the clock and give myself 30 seconds to answer all 3 questions. All right, here we go. So I'll start the clock as soon as I finish reading the first question. So the first question was, will Yoel Romero ever earn another title shot? God, I hope not. No, thank you. No, thank you. No, thank you. Even if he fights to 52, I can't see anything like that ever again. In light of the UFC inducting John Jones versus Alexander Gustafsson, I don't know. I'm seeing. I'd like to see Carlos Condit versus Robbie Lawler added to the Hall of Fame. And then can OAM make waves in PFL's lightweight division? I don't really care.
Great
ding,
answer.
Ding, 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 ding.
Damn it, this was a trick question.
I almost want to ask another speed bag just to kind of throw things up, but I'm not going to do that.
I guess we already talked about the hematoma one.
If Yoel Romero, is he going to pull the Julio Franco? Is he really going to fight that long? I don't think so.
No,
I don't know what you guys think.
I don't think so, man. Yoel is probably older than 42 or 43 anyway. So
Yep.
Yeah.
So he already has.
Yeah,
now.
he's already broken Bernard Hopkins' record. So
he made all that money in the damn in that lawsuit too, man. Like, how could you stay motivated after that?
Yeah.
Man.
I'd be surprised if he saw a dime from that so far. But he did. Yeah. He told me at a scrum last year that he tried to insinuate that he got all that money. Okay. I know that was serious cap on that one. I wasn't taking that too seriously. But here's another quick question for you guys. Can you name a more comically disrespectful moment at a press conference than Khabib kicking Tony's belt off the stage?
Man, I felt offended so badly.
maybe the whole Kevin Lee, Michael Chiesa, like, go talk about the fucking mom. Go talk about the fucking mom. And then he runs over there like he wanted the security to step in. And Kevin Lee just stood up and stole his
clipped him.
Dude, that was like my first live event covered for MMA Latest. I was right there with Matt Wells, dude. We were right there in Dallas. And I was like, this press conference is fucking weird, man. Like this, if you recall, I also made a little bit of headway there on Reddit from that one because a lot of people thought that I tried to punk John Jones, which I didn't. I didn't even know what I did until people started hitting me up. Remember, I cut him off when he was talking, and I gave him the drill sergeant knife hand, and I was like, hold on a second. I'm not done talking.
Oh, that was you that did that.
Yeah.
Oh, man. I didn't know.
I did.
A celebrity in the house.
Look at you ruffling feathers all over.
No more, dude. No more. I can't.
Oh no! You got too much of the sauce in you, Rodney. It's going to happen again. Yeah. It's a rite of passage. I think it's a rite of passage to be yelled at or at a press conference for Dana to get mad at you or for to get Twitter trolls. It is a badge of honor. That means you're doing the right damn thing.
He already got on to me in a scrum one time at Contender Series, and I'm like, he got, you know how he gets all fucking red, like he got bright red like a tomato, and I was like, oh, sorry.
Yeah, he's given me that look a couple times. It warms my heart.
You're a mean guy. So what are you gonna do?
I am a mean guy.
I'm covering 249 live for Sherdog, so I think I need to get some tips from you guys on how to say the right thing, to turn the right key.
Just ask him who's going to pay his taxes. All right,
so Tony's going to be there, so I do so at your own risk.
All right, fellas. So, of course, as usual, the sport of mixed martial arts trucks on ahead. We've got a busy weekend. We've got Bellator and we've got the UFC. So, I guess we'll start with quick talk about Bellator. Got 2 quarterfinals in the featherweight Grand Prix. Patricio Pitbull taking on Pedro Carvalho, and Daniel Weichel will be facing Emmanuel Sanchez. So AJ McKee is now injured. Does this mean that Patricio Pitbull is got a clear shot to victory here, gentlemen?
Well, I'll jump in real quick, and it turns out that I guess AJ McKee's fine to compete in June. So that's something that came out today, because Bellator had their big super show today, and they had everybody on stage. It was the Bellator version of the UFC on stage. I'm surprised nobody said anything mean about somebody's mom, but AJ McKee, the rumors of his demise are somewhat exaggerated. He's coming back in June to fight Darrion Caldwell. So I guess to answer the question, yeah, I'm still gonna go ahead and say that any other fighter not named Patricio Freire is the dark horse in the tournament by a pretty wide margin. The other side of the bracket.
Oh yeah, you got it. Yeah, because the bottle was blurred out. Yeah.
the other side of the bracket that Pitbull's on. It's Pitbull and Carvalho and Weichel and Sanchez. So the winners of those 2 fight. I'm gonna go out on a limb and say that Freire is going to go on, and I'm also going to go out on a limb and say that by the end of the year, Proper 12 will be sponsored in Bellator.
Aren't they already, or is that PFL?
PFL.
Okay, I could have sworn they were on the Bellator cage last time out. When they were last in LA, that was, I can't even remember the main event. Oh, the Cyborg and Julia Budd fight.
Budd, yeah.
AJ McKee was there and was very, very noticeably limping. When they brought him around the cage a couple times, and it was a very, very noticeable limp. So to hear that he had some sort of injury woes was not a shock whatsoever. But still, that being said, man, Darrion Caldwell, with the performance he put on last time, Caldwell upping the aggression. That's a tough out for anybody. He was my dark horse originally in that tournament, but with him, with the performance he put on last time, against Henry Corrales. Not Henry Corrales. Who did he fight last time? I was sitting right there. Yeah, Archuleta. Yes. Yeah. That was pretty damn impressive. Caldwell is my dark horse here. Any other thoughts on the continuing rounds in the PFL tournament?
Just that even before I heard that AJ McKee would be back, I would have favored Patricio Pitbull against him. Straight up anyway. Like I still think that this was always Patricio's tournament to lose. I think he at 145 is the best fighter that Bellator has ever had on roster.
And as a note, it was Adam Boric. He whooped up on not Archuleta. Pitbull.
Oh, well, okay.
Pitbull.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Pitbull destroyed Archuleta. Sorry.
Yes.
But Caldwell, he laid waste to Adam Boric. Remember, it was like a 2-minute tap out. Everybody was like,
sitting. I was there going, "Oh no!" I can't even remember. I was sitting right there, and I can't even remember. Wow, my memory really sucks. All right. So other notable things on this card: Paul Daly is on the main card. Nick Newell as well. I believe it's his first main card appearance in Bellator. I think he's been on the prelims for his past couple of fights. Matt Mitrione. Also on the main card as well, and Leslie Smith closing out the prelim. So Leslie Smith, friend of the show, right there. So definitely has some interesting matchups on this card. But of course, the most of the attention will follow the UFC as they go to Brasilia. Kevin Lee is facing Charles Oliveira in the main event there. A sneaky good card when you look at this from top to bottom. So quickly, fellas. If you can give me one fight on this card that you're particularly looking forward to outside of the main and co-main events. And I'll start with you on this one, Ben.
Are we talking about the Bellator or the UFC card?
UFC.
UFC card, if you just want to see something weird and bizarre and shitty happen that will have you angry and happy afterwards, Johnny Walker versus Nikita Krylov.
There it is.
I mean,
Yep, there it
that is like pound for pound, probably the greatest resume of weird in-cage occurrences that's happened in UFC history in a while. Damian Maia versus Gilbert Burns is a something's got to give type match. You know, but don't watch Trinaldo versus McDessie. It's going to turn out exactly like you think it is.
See, that's the fight I was going to highlight because it can be so good or it can be so bad.
No. It's going to be bad.
It's going to be the greatest thing or the worst thing.
If we talk here a week from today and you can tell me with a straight face that fight was fire, I will Venmo you $10. Like, as we speak. Well, and you won't be able to do it because that fight is going to be fucking terrible.
Well, even I want $10.
yeah, but I don't know if you're going to be able to do that.
All right, Jay, what's standing out to you on this one?
Well, I don't know, to compound on what Duffy said about Walker Krylov. I kind of knew this, and I had written about this before, but it's worth pointing out again. Until Krylov's last fight against Glover Teixeira, all 32 of Krylov's fights ended inside the distance. He finished 26 guys within 2 rounds. Like, there's no time for love, Dr. Jones. It is on, and he's going to hit you, or he's going to get hit, and he's going to fall down, or he's going to knock you down. And whatever's going to happen. So that has the ultimate potential for something ridiculous to happen. But in an actual fight of the night candidate, give me Juicio Formiga, Brandon Moreno. I am really looking forward to this because of the grappling exchanges that are going to ensue. Because Brandon Moreno can scramble like nobody's business, and Formiga's going to put him in bad situations. That's what he does. That's his game. If this fight stays on the feet, it's because Moreno wasn't getting taken down. I mean, Formiga doesn't have a knockout. That's not an accident. That's purely intentional. So I feel like this fight could be a scramble palooza. I'm trying to remember the fight recently. I think it might have been a Nick Lentz fight or a Darren Elkins fight where it was just ground exchanges and back and forth, everything on that. So I think that has the potential to be, Formiga could set a flyweight record for submission attempts that they don't pull off by the end of the night. But I think this could be a lot of fun.
All right. Rodney, any particular matchups you want to highlight on the UFC card this weekend?
Yeah, you guys mentioned a lot of good ones, and the main event is, of course, a fantastic one. But as far as the on the rest of the card, Brandon Moreno, Juicio Formiga is a great one, man, because you got a few guys that are really breathing life into this division and working on, keeping it alive and giving us a reason to stay invested in it. And it looks like, all signs point to the title fight being, rebooked. Let's hope Figueiredo can make weight this time, and hopefully, headbutts initiated by the guy that ends up getting knocked out, who then says that the headbutt was a factor. I don't know what that's all about, but yeah, after that though, you're looking at the number 3 and the number 5 ranked guy in that division, so you could potentially be looking at your next title contender in that weight class. So that's a sleeper.
All right, cool. All right, fellas, so we'll wrap things up with Buried Treasure, and this is, of course, where we share an MMA story from the past week that should have received more coverage, or you just want to put a brief highlight on. So, Ben, I will start with you. What is your Buried Treasure this week?
Well, it turns out that this week we got a little bit of closure on the Abel Trujillo story, for better or for worse. For those that don't remember, actually, it wasn't even last year. Year before last, it was 2018. The story broke last year, but it was in 2018 that the accusation took place that he had basically been grooming underage girls on Instagram. You can fill in the blanks there. It was an ugly story when it broke last year. And then it disappeared for a while because this is such a fast-moving news cycle. You know, we're always just 24 hours away from an actual story of criminal malfeasance being buried by a fighter saying something outrageous, that it kind of disappeared. But it resurfaced this week, and Trujillo made a plea agreement to avoid felony charges in that case. So we don't know yet whether he is going to see any jail time at all. I mean, he's already been out of the sport for a couple of years, but he's still only 36, and he's always been the kind of guy that you assumed he would just pop up on any UFC card the minute he was legally cleared to do so. But
I thought you were going to say any USADA test, but go ahead.
I'm surprised that he's not popped up on any USADA tests. Honestly.
Yeah.
Did he?
No. I was just going to mention he was scheduled to fight at Battlefield FC against Will Brooks until
he fell from that one, and that wasn't because of any testing other than testing for grooming underage girls on Instagram.
Yeah. Right.
You know, which is handled by the police, luckily. But yeah, anyway, that's it. You know, sentencing will take place in April. We'll see where he ends up and for how long. I don't say this easily, but with any luck, he's out of the sport for good and no longer something we have to talk about. Farewell and good riddance, Abel Trujillo.
Go the way of Hermes Franca. Peace. Jay, can you share with us your buried treasure this week?
Yeah, we'll stay in the criminal land. We'll keep to an uncomfortable sexual situation. However, there's a different ending at this. UFC welterweight Razak Alhassan, also in 2018, was accused of sexually assaulting and essentially, I think the charges were officially sexual assault, but he was for raping two women. Now he also serves as a bouncer in a bar in Fort Worth, and he was the bouncer at a big event that was happening, a party of some sort, and he took these two girls home. Well, he went back to this one girl's house, and she was it was 20 and a 22-year-old, and she was living with the 20-year-old was living with her mother, and they all stayed there, and he did whatever he did, and the mother reported the situation, and you can read the rest of it on SureDog.com. We have a whole coverage. It's a lot of details, but essentially the jury ruled him not guilty for his testimony, for the interrogation, and for the way the investigation was handled, because of allegedly when the incident happened, the mother took the daughter to the hospital, but the daughter didn't speak to the police about the incident until a time later. And so there was some fumbling, some mishandling of the case, and there were a lot of holes in the story, and the jury ruled that he's not guilty. So there is, I mean, you know, whatever you feel about the case, Razak Alhassan will be back in the sport soon, knocking people's heads off.
Interestingly enough, too, that the UFC didn't make any comment about him at all during the season. We couldn't even get confirmation whether or not he was still on the roster.
They let him
but
fight
now,
once.
but now I think they did release a statement. Yep. Yeah, that so he'll be back in the UFC in no time. I can assume there. Rodney, can you share with us your buried treasure for the week, please, sir?
Yeah, and if I could just piggyback real quick on that Razak Judo Thunder story. So he was actually at the Dominance MMA media day that they did on Saturday, but then I didn't see him, and I was like, because I specifically had asked Ali the day before. I was like, hey, listen, you got to let me get an exclusive interview with this guy. I've known him for a while, and I'm one of the people who stuck by with him and said, look, hey, let's wait until the facts come out. Let's wait until this plays out in court before we start pointing fingers and start accusing him before he has his day in court, because we love to do that in our society, and it's disgusting. But then it gets toward the allegations. So you can't, that's why you have to sit on the sidelines and just not pass judgment. At least that's the way I looked at it. However, they didn't bring him out. He was in the back. They only let MMA Junkie talk to him. And I did see the interview that they did. I was talking to John Morgan from MMA Junkie about this, and we said some of the same things. Like, wow, it's crazy. The UFC never really mentioned anything. But then we thought it's kind of a good thing, like for all involved, for the sport and everything, because he's flying under the radar big time, even for like fans. Like, a lot of people don't really still yet know who he is. And even though 2019 was like the year that the Africans took over, and he's from Ghana, and so he's a guy that who missed out on a lot of that shine that was happening because of guys like Kamaru Usman, because of Adesanya, because of Sadiq Youssef, who's another up and comer. But guess what? That's over and done with, and he's coming back. But can you imagine if he would have been a big name? Like, imagine if that happened to Kamaru Usman. We'd have all the mainstream media in the world coming down on our sport, talking about how we're a bunch of savages and it's human cockfighting. So, hey, you know what? It's water under the bridge at this point. As far as stories, I could probably do this as buried treasure on every single episode. I don't know if you guys saw this story about this reporter that was talking shit. No, I'm playing. Mm-hmm. I'm not talking about that fucking shit. Anyway, I promised myself that come Monday I would not be talking about it anymore. So I did say what I had to say about my thing with Tony. No, the honest to God's truth is the fighter pay. I realize it's always going to be disgustingly low, but man, when let me just make sure I have this right, because I thought I looked and I thought I was going crazy, and when I saw that Joanna Jedrzejczyk got
made $106,000.
Zhang
made 100,
and 100, including a win bonus. Plus, they had the fight of the night bonus. But let me just say, there's a lot of income that is not disclosed, because like the gate was 2.7 million, I think. So they tell us that we don't ever. Well, I guess we'll eventually get the pay-per-view figures. We got to think that those folks will get a piece of that action. But, I don't know what sort of deal. I mean, Jay might know better than any of us as an attorney, but I have to think, like, when an event is hosted at a venue like a T-Mobile, for example, in other words, not a venue that's owned by UFC like the Apex, there's a lot of money to be made in merchandise, because that stuff is, I mean, you got T-shirts that are $30 a pop. That's ridiculous. Alcohol, I'm sure. I mean, I would think that the whatever event is going on, they have to get some cut of that, and the alcohol is ridiculously overpriced. So I wonder how much money actually gets raked in. Either way, just the money that we know about, and just the fact that we know how much that this company is worth, and you got boxers that I've never seen, not in the, that I can remember, maybe since I was a kid, that I've seen a boxing match, like since Gotti Ward or something like this, have I seen a fight so good. But yeah, boxers, they don't get insulted with that horrific pay scale. Why? Because we know the money's there, and the sport's been around long enough that, the fighters eventually were, and the promoters and the managers were able to make enough headway to make the paydays make sense. But when you talk about $100,000 and your head is swollen up like a Klingon, and we're not even accounting for all the overhead that a fighter has, no pun intended, the overhead. I'm serious. These guys pay a ton of money for their nutrition, strength and conditioning. They pay coaches. They pay all these expenses. So at the end of the day, and then taxes, that's not really $100,000. What if she's injured and can only fight one time this year? Guess what? Some of us on this panel, maybe all of us, might actually end up, if she doesn't fight again this year, we might make more money than she does. Now, get a load of that.
Yeah. Right. I mean, to kind of buttress a couple of your points, I can confirm that organizations get a cut of the concessions and that kind of thing, and UFC would also give them a cut of the merchandise, but UFC gets the lion's share of the merchandise. So yeah, there's a lot of money. There was another one that stuck out to me from the prior event. Tom Breeze, as in I fought 5 times at the UFC already and then had to take some time off, was making 10-10. He's a 5-fight veteran, 4-1 in the UFC, and he was making 10-10. Which doesn't make sense in any degree. I don't understand how that contract works. because when the traditional UFC contract in a rookie minimum, 10-10, you win 12-12, you win 14-14, 16-16, and so forth, until the renegotiation. So I don't understand that. Yeah. I thought it was Sean O'Connell was talking about it, but I could be mistaken. From the first PFL season when he made $1 million, the take home was about $400 to $450 after everything, all of it combined, after manager, after expenses, after everything like that. The $1 million was cut down to $400,000 and change. So yeah, you have to imagine Weili Zhang's 100,000 purse, or what? 200, I thought it was 100. Was that? So it's too bad.
All right. Okay, so final buried treasure for this week comes courtesy of Brian Ortega, who let the worlds of mixed martial arts and K-pop collide by smacking Jay Park, who I guess is a big star to some people. I have no idea who he is, but apparently he's some big star. But he's also the translator for Korean Zombie. And in the crowd at the T-Mobile Arena, this altercation took place when Korean Zombie went to the bathroom. All the jokes I could tell about this, but the only thing I want to express here is that, yes, Mandela was right. He did make a choice. So let's go ahead and call this a wrap for this edition of Unleashed. Special thanks to our guest, Rodney James Edgar. You can follow him on Twitter at RodneyJames138. You can also follow the jack of all trades who's master of them all, Ben Duffy, at Benjamin Duffy. Find his work on Sherdog.com. And Jay Petrie, of course, you can find him on Twitter at Jay Petrie, also his work at Sherdog.com. I'm Ant Walker. Follow me on Twitter at Ant Walker MMA. And you know what you got to do. You got to stay beautiful. You got to stay positive. Most of all, you got to stay sexy. I'll see you when I see you. Peace.